Hey everyone. I'm going to give it about 3 minutes until a few people join, and then I'll kick off in earnest. So between now and 9:30, you can just watch me alone here. But welcome. I can see people joining. So uh, hey, good morning. Hope you are well wherever you are. I'll wait until 9:30, as I said, and then I'll kick off and start sharing some news about Income Ribbon, which is really exciting. I think Substack needs to have some kind of holding music until 9:30. Otherwise, this is going to be very boring for you guys just to watch me sitting here. So be patient while we get up and running. And feel free if you're an early joiner. I have some pre um, questions that were asked before. I'm going to try my best to manage this by myself. So feel free to uh, ask questions in the chat. I will try and follow along and write them down and then answer them in real time. If I can, I'll go through the questions that I've been asked before in comments and direct messages. But hey, Carolina, nice to see you. Please, yeah, feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them. This is only going to be as engaging as you are, and would love to have some questions that I can answer in real time. I know this is going to be just very much me speaking to the camera, but hopefully it's useful for you all. Um, so I think we've got enough joining. So I'm gonna start kicking off in about 1 minute's time. Okay, let's do this. Cool. Well, look, everyone, thank you for joining. I really appreciate you taking the time on this Saturday morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm based over on the west coast of America on a place called Bainbridge Island, which is um, off the coast of Seattle, which is a lovely place. I'm very blessed to live in this part of the world with all the crazy stuff that's going on everywhere. Seems to be getting crazier each day. The goal of today was really to transparently share and demystify ink and ribbon for people and the publishing process. I've been on the other side of the publishing process for a long time, where I've been submitting poems and getting rejected, trying to understand like, how does a press work. And then, as many of you may know, if you've been following the journey, in late 2025, we formed a non-profit poetry press. When I say we, really myself had to figure out how do you form a non-profit press in America? How do you become certified as a non-profit press? How do you build a board, governance, all of the mechanics of growing a non-profit? And then I had to think about how we want to get out to market and promote what we do with the world. And Substack, to be fair, has been an absolute joy. What a wonderful, supportive, uplifting community. And I often say this to the board and to people that I share when I meet poets or writers of any ilk, that Ink and Ribbon is the poetry press that Substack built. And I think that's true. And I'm really proud of that because it's changed the way I think about how we go and get our work out into the world direct, right? Really, no middleman. Just, I'm not going to use Amazon or big distributors. I'm going to go direct to market because I can reach you more effectively that way. So today is really a Q&A. I wanted to open up the floor to questions from the audience. Some people have sent, I've got about or six or eight questions that have been sent in before, which I'll go through. And the goal is to demystify what we do. So one of our principles is complete transparency. So I'll even talk about the economics of what we do. We're a non-profit, so it's an interesting model, but I think it will help people understand how we're working. So let's kick off. I think I wanted to start with saying one thing at the beginning while people continue to join. I think poetry and writing in general, but especially poetry, for me, it's a process that starts with a singular person, right? You, for whatever reason, are compelled to write. You pick up a pen, use a typewriter, you're on your laptop, wherever, however, what materials you use, it doesn't matter. You're a singular person and you have something that you want to share, either to let it out for yourself, to heal yourself, um, to relieve some trauma, just because you're creative. It doesn't, there's many reasons why people write. And then that amazing piece of work goes out into the world and it ends with a singular person sitting in a bookshop, in a cafe, in their sitting room, reading those words. And I think that's an amazing journey, right? From a singular person of healing and relieving themselves of that emotion onto a piece of paper to someone who takes those words on and can digest those and can heal themselves. But there's a whole middle bit, right? How do you get those words from that singular piece of paper to the other singular person? And that's what I'm going to try help demystify today, at least our point of view of how we do it. So I'm going to just go through some of these questions, and again, I can see someone asking or typing in the chat, so I will try and keep along. But please be patient and give me grace as I do so. Um, so from Gov had three questions, so I'm going to go through these first. His first question was: is there a preferred structure for submissions? Should poets include an author's note, intentions, or backstory, or just the poems themselves? Um, I think that's a really, really good question. I think the way that we take in submissions and our mechanics are through a system called Subfolio. The reason we use Subfolio rather than Submittable is Submittable has very high costs, and um, the percentage they take when someone submits, if there's a reading fee, which we have, because that helps fund our operations, is very high. So that really doesn't help us grow as a business. It helps Submittable grow. And they are the leading submissions platform, right? So they have really a monopoly on the market. But I discovered a platform called Subfolio, and it does exactly the same thing, but at much lower cost because they're new. So we use Subfolio. What we ask for people to submit when they submit their poems is really to include an author's biography, um, and um, yeah, the backstory of the collection. This is for our open reading, so this is specifically for manuscripts. And so for manuscripts, what we're looking for is something that's well rounded, not just a collection of poems that have been put together, but really looking at the narrative arc. So if we can understand um, the rationale for why these poems are collected together, the story behind the human story behind it, that helps us really place ourselves in the poet's mind as we read them. When we read poems and poetry, for our point of view, not all the poems are written for us to read, right? They could be written for another set of audiences, and we want to understand the the purpose of these poems, why they came into existence, and the poet's attachment to them, or what they mean. So I think it's really important that you include some information in the space provided around the collection and why, how it came about. Um, Also, the biography as well, right? Whether you've been published elsewhere, whether you've been accepted into journals, that's really, really helpful. I see a lot of people in their submissions on the front page highlight which poems have been selected by which magazines or publications. And yes, we do accept poems that have been published elsewhere, as long as they're not been published as a collection on their own. Actually, we kind of recommend people having their work selected before they submit is helpful. So, there is kind of a broad rule of thumb that if you have 10% of your poems selected by reviews, it adds some credibility to what you're submitting. Not a hard, fast rule, but like that kind of understands, oh, these poems have been out in the world and they've been accepted. It helps build authority in that space. Um, and so that cover letter, that author's note is really, really important. I think one of the things that's probably helpful for people submitting is understanding ink and ribbon, right? So there are some presses out there that have moved to just exclusive submissions. So they will only accept your manuscript if it's exclusively submitted to them and you haven't submitted to other people. Um, I don't believe in that. We're not at that stage to do that. But it's helpful if you understand our publishing model. We're a non-profit press. We're in year zero, really, year one. We have a very specific model of how many we produce, what we print. So doing your own research on the press, and if it's a right fit for you, is going to be really important, because we don't want to waste each other's time if we go through and accept your manuscript and then you realize, hey, we're not distributing on Amazon or on mass, or we won't do mass production. We're a craft forward press, so really understanding how how we exist and what we do is important. And I think that is just, something you should do with any submission that you put out there in the world. You should do your research. The tools we have at our disposal, like Submittable, Subfolio, makes it really easy just to click submit, submit, submit with manuscripts. And whilst there's value in doing that, I think the intention behind it and what you put out into the universe of, like, I want to be published by this press because of this reason, will help you manifest that outcome. And so hopefully that answers that question, Gub. Um, I know you had a couple more, so I'll go on there. I'm just going to check some of the live questions, so bear with me as I scroll back. Um, Is it so, Gene? Is Ink and Ribbon Press going to publish poetry exclusively, or do you print any other genres such as short story? So, yeah, specifically, it is poetry only, and that will remain for the future for a couple of reasons. The main one is when you get certified as a 501c3 nonprofit, you have to be really clear and specific on your mission, and our vision has always been to be a poetry press. I can't say that, and if we changed our mission, then that could sometimes impact how we think about grants or 501c3 status. So we have to live into our mission, and we have to make sure that we have strong governance around that. And our mission is clearly stated as a poetry press at this point. That doesn't mean that won't change, but we're very early in our formation, and so I know that's disappointing to some people who want their short stories or novels or memoirs published. But we also want to be conservative in our growth, right? We're very much focused on the craft of poetry and the craft of bookbinding early on. Never say never, but at least for the foreseeable 1 to 2, maybe 3 years, it's going to be poetry. We've got a lot to figure out on, like, how we get this work out here. And so even just reading all of the poetry manuscripts and understanding what our editorial voice is a journey. But I think there is a path where we would move into a world where we would expand out, but we would do that very thoughtfully and with intention. And if that did happen, we would announce that on Substack. Thanks, Gene, for the question. Okay, yeah, Gene, great. If you write poetry, love to see your submissions. There's a couple of ways we can talk about how you can submit either the manuscript, which is a much more um, bigger lift to submit, or the Lemon Light Prize, which is, lower bar to entry. As in, you can submit one poem if you wanted to. Back to just one question here, then I'll go back into the chat. So, Gub, your second question was, which I think is tied to the question in the chat. If I say your name wrong, Ari, apologies. The question I've got here is: are you looking for precise form or free verse and unconventional work, or is unconventional work considered? Is there a preference we have as press? And similar to the question in the chat, do you have preference regarding free verse or classical? I think we are such an early stage, we're still figuring out our editorial voice. There's been a lot of really interesting submissions, some translations, some classical work, some very heavy theological work. I think what we're trying to be form agnostic in what we do. We care about attention, craft, but we also want to make sure that our early publications do not box ourselves into a specific classical route, for example. Um, I think the unconventional structures are welcome in poetry. I think if they are done in a way that doesn't detract from the heart of the work, because sometimes I think unconventional poetry, it becomes more about design than the heart of the work. And so I hope that answers the question. It's really about the emotion and the feeling of the poems rather than the specific constraint that you may have. Like we could, I could see a time where we do something, I don't know, near me, which is like, Diane Zeus's sonnets, right? They're not conventional sonnets in the true sense of the word, but we would explore that. So hopefully that answers your question. What if you combine classical and free verse? I think, yeah, open to that. I think um, um, it's all in how it comes together and feels cohesive as a piece, and whether that feels like something that our press at this stage can carry. Um, I think there's a lot of choices that we have to make early on, right? So, um, and we only have a finite number of authors that we can publish this year because of funding. So, you know, like I said, we have some translations of Chinese dynasty Tang poetry, which is really interesting. But is that the right choice for us now versus next year? We had an amazing poet that I'm really interested in who comes from the trans community. And I think that's an area that we want to explore that diversity as well. We've had people of color with a specific thread around certain things that are really important to us to express. But editorially, we have to make certain decisions because this year, realistically, we're going to publish two debut authors or two debut books, whether they're their first books or not, TBD. We have one that's signed that we're announcing tomorrow, which is super exciting, and then one we're still looking for in our open reading. Um, but the economics of our press mean we can't publish multiple different variants of publications. We have to really think carefully about these editorial choices. So to answer the question, there are no real constraints at this point. I think we're still figuring out our voice, and you guys are going to help shape that by what you submit and the quality of the work that you are submitting. Okay, let me go back to the chat. Carolina, having been published elsewhere, even at 10%, is disappointing for an as of yet unpublished writer. That's not a hard, fast rule of credibility. No, 100% not a hard, fast rule. I think I was chatting to a few of the faculty advisors. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a poet myself. I have my own Substack, which is crow.gkallum.com if you want to find me there. And I'm doing a master's in poetry because I love the craft. And the advisor saying, before you submit your manuscript, um, they like to believe that it's been accepted in reviews. And someone said the 10% rule, like it doesn't matter. I mean, it's not like I've had one submission where nearly every poem has been accepted. Um, that has different trade-offs and pros and cons. It's like this work's been read already. Do we take that into consideration? Yes, because it has credibility in some way. But does this mean the work is old and been out there for a long time? Potentially. And then the other thing that we're looking for are people that have not been accepted, right? We want to find those new authors that we're going to help build a long-term relationship with that help grow. So it's not like nothing is a hard and fast rule. I think it's just a kind of a guideline of that's what some of the industry people that I've met have said that could help build credibility when you're trying to get in Copper Canyon, right? Those big established presses that are revered. They probably are going through thousands of applications or submissions, and if they see that they've been accepted, maybe that piques their interest more than someone who hasn't. So I can't speak on behalf of them, although I know Michael at Copper Canyon well. I think that when I'm going through what we've got, it does definitely pique a bit of interest when you see it's been accepted in like New England Review. You're like, okay, I'm going to read that poem quickly, or go to that poem first to see the kind of quality in the work that's there. So it may be an advantage. It's not a hard and fast rule. Um, are you going to do hard copies, Kindle, or solely online? So the there's two versions of the books that we're doing, and I'll show. I've shared this before, but let me just do this again. So, the way we think about the press is this is about craft. So, craft of poetry and the craft of book binding. And so, we are going to create two versions of each book that we make. One is what I'm calling a limited edition version. So these limited edition versions are 250 copies. And these 250 copies are what are the main copies of our book. We're not printing any more than that, but these are I want to say they are a mass produced version, but there's only 250, so it's not mass produced. And we're really careful about the paper we choose, the binding, everything we do. And so these are going to be high quality paperbacks. And so an example of the one, this is not our book, this is Tender by Gaspro Press, which is an amazing press in Nova Scotia, is the books, the quality of the books and the paper is really, it's going to be hard for you to see, but it's really kind of high quality material, really thick cover. And so these are going to be our 250 limited edition, all numbered and potentially signed by the author. We also produce 3 hardbound fine art editions. And so this is our prototype, which is a clamshell case. And only 3 of these are going to be produced per each edition. And you open it up and you have this um, lovely kind of book. Feels like a prayer book, to be fair. And this is produced by McCall Bindery, our binder. You can see all like kind of the gilding and everything in there. The wonderful kind of marble paper. We are producing 3 of those books as well. One of them goes to the author. So the author has a choice. We'll talk about economics in a minute, but the author has a choice. They can either have one of those books or they can have an honorarium. So we'll give them a cash alternative, because some authors maybe don't want the book. I mean, I want the book. I love the book. It's amazing, right? I would love to have that on my shelf as something that I've produced, but some people may want the money instead, and we want to honor that and give them the optionality to have the cash equivalent. The other 2 copies of these books go one to the archive. So a really important thing about what we do, and I'll come on to this, it's going to be slightly around preservation of text, but one goes to the archive. So that means we save that in a place and store that for future generations and for the press. And then one goes to a major gift donor, a fundraiser. So an incentive for raising funds is, hey, if you donate to us, over a certain amount, you can have one of these books as part of your donation, and they can treasure that as a gift from the press. And so the economics, I'll talk about that because I think it's important when I'm talking about this, to demystify the economics of how we're doing this. This 250 and these 3 of these, just to do that together, not including any design time, any operational time, any marketing, anything, just the printing and the press, is $6,000. And so $6,000 to produce 250 books and 3 hardbound. And that opens up a question around like, how do you even price the book, right? Because if you look at the unit cost, it's about $11 for the paper bound. But we're lucky, we're a non-profit, so it's not about making profit. We're going to sell it at $18.95 plus postage in the US for the paperback book. That means when it's stocked in really exclusive independent bookstores, we'll make an official loss on the book. And that's why it's really important that we have donors and people contribute to us, because we're not making a profit. There's no one on a salary. I give all my time for free. Everything is done heart forward, not wallet forward, and that means we can take away the stresses of margin and profit. Of course, when we sell books, it means we can reinvest that back into the business or the organization and produce more books. So the way to think about it economically is, for every $6,000 we raise, I can publish a new poet. I can get a new piece of work out there, and that's all we're going to do. Every time we get $6,000 or raised, I can publish a new poet. I can do something new, and that's how we're thinking about how we economically make this viable. That also means, from an author or a poet, because I know I had some questions on this. Yeah, we can't at this point. There's a joke in poetry world that there's no money in poetry. Which is the challenge. Like, for poets that we work with, they have to really kind of understand our economic model. That we're not paying poets for their work at this point, apart from the honorarium if they do not want the hardbound book. I think there's a misconception that people are coming into our press and going, right, we're going to distribute 10,000 copies and I'm going to make X percent. That isn't the case. I would love that to be the case. Well, I would love to make the money for you guys, but I wouldn't want to distribute 10,000. Our press is about high quality, limited edition, craft forward work. So hopefully that answers a couple of questions that I know have been floating around. And let me just go through some of the other questions in the chat that I'm catching up on. JJ Rose, at the moment, just to answer that question, it is poetry only. So fictional and non-fiction, maybe in the future, but not at this point. Julia, can the submissions be broken up into groupings of themes? At the moment, we just have one broad open reading that can for what we're for the poetry manuscripts. So everything could be put there. You could submit multiple works if you have different themes. The Lemon Light Prize has a specific theme called Desire Lines, which we'll talk about later. But I might need more information around how you're thinking about that thematic to answer that question fully. And I'll probably say your name wrong, Anata. Are you willing to pick up some non-native English poets writing in English? Yeah, I think there is no restriction. I think what we have to think about is the merit of the work and how it lands with our audiences. So we also have other news. I volunteered a deputy editor yesterday who's going to help us up with some of the work. So let's say you were selected, then we would expect a deputy editor to work with you and maybe just hone that manuscript so it's ready for publication. So hopefully that answers your question. JJ, how many books do you think you'll publish each year for now? Yeah, good question. So this year is our first year. The good news is we announced tomorrow our debut book, which is super exciting because we've only been in formation for 4 months. As per my kind of previous comment, when we raise $6,000, that means I can publish another book. We have the capacity to publish another new book. So we'll do at least 2 unique books this year, 2 titles, one already signed, ready to go, launched tomorrow in terms of the announcement. And the second one, we have our open reading open between now and the end of February the 14th, which you can go inkomeribbon.org, go to submissions, go and submit. We have lots of entries into that and manuscripts we're working through. I'm hopeful that we're going to select another poet from that open reading. And then we will publish that book in the fall this year. Alongside those unique books, we also have the Lemon Light Prize. The Lemon Light Prize is a $3,000 prize fund, but there's also a paperback, like the beautiful books we're making. We're also going to do one of those. So for now, at least 3 books this year, 3 titles, 2 of them unique authors, 1 an anthology collection. And then next year, the goal would be to try and get to 4 plus an anthology. And I think for the size we are, that's probably manageable. And so, 3 this year, including the anthology, 5 next year with the anthology is the plan. Carolina, good question. Ink and Ribbon and Lemon Light Prize. So Nata, sorry, I just saw your question underneath it. So hopefully that answered your question about the anthology. So with the Lemon Light Prize. Carolina, so Ink and Ribbon has been a name that has been around for ages for me. I've used it in many different ways. It's because I used to write poetry on my, I don't know, there's a good typewriter behind me somewhere. You might be able to see it. So I used to be just always on a typewriter writing my own poetry. And when I was thinking about building the press, it's just the natural name. I think it kind of points to the craft of writing that I think feels, I want to say vintage, not antique, that feels old worldy, right? We're trying to slow the press. We're trying to think about things differently in this modern age where AI and digital channels like this one are prevalent. I think Ink and Ribbon just helped us think about the slowness of what we want to do and the carefulness of what you need to do. Although someone said yesterday they thought it was the ribbon that you get in a book like this, which I thought was sweet, like a bookmark. So I've never thought of that before. So it can mean that as well if you wanted to. The Lemon Light Prize, that's really personal. I think if you go to personal in a good way, if you go to inkomeribbon.org and the Lemon Light Prize and scroll down, there's actually a link to the poem. I was I'm writing a book collection called The Familiarity, and there's a poem in there called Middlesex, which is a place in England that I used to live, and it's almost like a love poem to my wife and to Middlesex, England. Not that I'm a colonial Brit, but it was just a phrase that comes up in the second stanza where I talk about seeing her in the lemon light. And as I was thinking about a prize name, outside of this, I work in marketing and do other stuff. I was trying to find something that was not too descriptive, that was easy to understand and just see without feeling like it was too complex. And so the lemon light just was my working draft, and it just stuck. I think you can put any meaning to it, but it was just something that was very personal to me. And yeah, go and have a look on inkomeribbon.org, scroll down and find that poem. It's something that Yeah, something that's very personal to me, but is also meaningless to other people. It's just like lemon light feels like a nice horizon where you wake up and the lights all yellow and hazy. So hopefully it doesn't put people off. There's a middle. Well, Gene, I know, like in moving to America, there are a ton of English names that I see that always confuse me, like town names all over the place. Um, okay, like back to the questions. Um, let's see, Gov. I think finishing your questions up, like number three, I had from you. Um, Probably similar to, I may have answered this. Are there specific themes that Income Ribbon looks for in poems or manuscripts? I don't have a narrow mandate, right? Like, but for me, it's about the human condition, right? So and I mean, that's broad as broad could be, but I want people to think about the lived experience, right? How they hold complexity in those poems without flattening it, and also use language in an interesting way without being um, academic. Let's put it that way. I think, the poetry collection we're publishing this tomorrow is a very complex set of poems that are fascinating, and I think we focus on that. How do you make sure the readers can really feel the experience that the poet's trying to express, but can see themselves in those poems as well. So, I think we have recurring interests around time, devotion, intimacy, labor, relationships. Personally, I'm writing a book about a marriage that went wrong, and then we reignited it and fell in love again. And that whole journey has been fascinating for me, and painful and joyful. And so I think we're looking for really heart forward work, um, rather than really strong, let's say, theological doctrines, right? Or I think it's about heart in what we do, and that's what appeals to me. But I think the submissions and the manuscripts we get early on are going to help shape what this press becomes. It's like a record label, right? At the moment, I'm not sure we're like Blue Note Jazz, or are we like like a Warner Brothers, like, or a Blues imprint, or like Columbia, or whatever it may be. I think at the moment we're all encompassing, and that may shift and get more specific as we find our find our feet. But at the moment, we're trying to avoid like being too specific. Okay. Um, this is from Ashlyn online, who sent this in. Um, do we accept pitches or complete manuscripts? How many poems are we looking for in submission? Right. So for the current open reading until February the 14th, we prefer relatively being a keyword, or near complete manuscripts. So ideally 48 to 80 pages is good. Um, some strong internal logic and sequencing of that narrative arc is really important for us, because that's going to help us understand the journey. Um, Coherence matter really more than length, though. I think if someone was to submit 10 poems and they were just blew us away, and we had a really gut feeling there was something there, I think we'd probably want to work with that poet over time to bring to life that manuscript. Obviously, that wouldn't be something we'd publish, just 10 poems for our books. We need to ideally have around 96 pages for the production, just the costs and what we're doing. So they are full manuscripts. But if we're trying to find poets, right? We're trying to support poets, not just the product of the book. So if we find someone who submits 10 poems and says, "Hey, I'm working on a bigger piece, it won't be ready till 2028, but I want to engage," really open to that. Alternatively, if someone hasn't got a manuscript ready, we're not at you haven't got the 48, 80 pages. The alternative is the Lemon Light Prize, which is up to 5 poems. You can submit as many 5 poem collections as you want. Um, there's a prize fund that's an incentive, right? $3,000, and you're getting the anthology. So that's another way of getting involved. Where if you're not quite ready for the manuscript, or if you feel like that, just the early stages of figuring out what to do, the Lemon Light Prize is useful. And to be clear, the Lemon Light Prize, the difference between the two, Lemon Light Prize is anonymously judged. We don't get to see anything, right? So you put all your information in, but it's all anonymized, and it goes through a workflow, so we can't have a biased perspective on who we're choosing. Really important for compliance and governance reason as a non-profit. But the manuscripts are not anonymized, right? We want your information. We want to understand like who you are, what you're doing. And so there's two variants there. But I think really important to understand like you can get involved in different ways depending on where you are in your career. Just gonna have a sip of coffee. Okay. Another question, which I think I've covered, is can a manuscript include previously published poems? Yes, 100%. Um, it's welcome. We just expect transparency. And if the collection, I think two ways to think about it. For the Lemon Light Prize, if that poem gets selected by a review, then yes, we need to know that because we'd probably have to pull that out and they would want you to pull it out as well. So let's say it was in another Colorado review, New England review, whatever, then I think they would expect you to pull it out if you had submitted this. For the manuscripts, we, yes, if you've been selected, if your work has been in other reviews, that's a benefit rather than a something that restricts you from being in. And of course, all social media, Substack, that doesn't really count. Like you can publish that wherever. We're not going to say, well, you've published this on Substack. We're not going to accept it. That's not the case. In fact, we want you to have your own audience. We want you to bring your audience to our community as well. This is from Rob. Income Ribbon versus self-publishing. Who is Income Ribbon best suited for versus poets who should self-publish? Um, I think the best way to think about this is Income Ribbon is people who care about craft and the book as a physical object. I think is a helpful way of thinking about it. People who value small, um, intentional reading over scale. People who want to be collaborative and build a curated publishing relationship. That's how I would really think about Income Ribbon. Self-publishing is going to be better for you, and I've self-published 4 books. And so, if you do want a guide on self-publishing, and you go to my personal Substack, which is you can find it on the website. There's a short link, crow, like the bird, crow.gkallum.org. And if you go through all my poems, there's like there's 5 blogs or posts on self-publishing in my experience, because I did that for years in 2007 to like 2018. I self-published 4 books. Some were 2,000 copies, some were a lot smaller. I learned a lot of things. But self-publishing may be better for you if you want full control over design and timeline. You're focused on speed. You prefer to manage production and distribution yourself. When you're working with a press, you hand over some of those things. So all design is handed over to the press in this instance because we have a very specific vision. So you have to be aligned, or you have to be comfortable with letting that go. That doesn't mean we don't share what we're doing, but you just have to be comfortable with letting go creative control there. Editorially, you have to engage with someone and have your work partnered in terms of like, hey, how can we elevate these poems? Are they singing from the page? Full creative control remains with the poet for our press, so you have final, what I'd say, is decisions on edits. But we would expect a partnership, like in terms of working through the poems, and exactly what I'm doing with the manuscript we're publishing later this year. We're currently going through editing. It's been a joy. It's been a learning experience for the poet and for myself as we go through that. And having that open relationship is really important. But yeah, I think self-publishing, the risks of self-publishing, very expensive, very time-consuming, and hard to break even, probably. And a lot of people end up in the print-on-demand world when they do that. Versus like true self-publishing, where you're actually producing the books of high quality and then distributing, because that means a big outlay up front. You're spending $3, $5, $10,000 or whatever, pounds, whatever it may be, to produce those books, and then you've got to sell them. So people will revert to print on demand. And I think when you go to print on demand, this is one of the things we're rebelling against. You lose the quality of the bookmaking, right? Because you're choosing potentially substandard material because it's cost effective, or it's been printed by someone from Amazon and then like sent to someone's house in the next day. I think I've got an example of Amazon doing that with an Ezra Pound book, where the print was all off, but it was bought on the Wednesday and it arrived on the Thursday. It was printed on that Wednesday. great economically, not great for the experience, in my opinion. So I think self-publishing is a different path, but it depends on finances and your ability to market the book, reach an audience, to sell that effectively. And it's a path I've loved doing, but it's kind of what I'm doing with Ink and Ribbon, but at a different scale. Um, and so there's no right or wrong; it's just your preference. Um, we talked about economics, so I'm not going to go through that. There was another question there about that. Let me just see if there's any more questions in the chat. Otherwise, I think that's most of the ones that we got sent in. So let me just scroll through the chat. If you've got any more questions, I'll stay on for the next 10 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll see if there are any questions in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them. Otherwise, I'm sure this gets um, shared as a replay. Okay, let me just look. Okay, I think we're good. No other questions. So I'll kind of wrap up with a couple of things, and then if questions come in, but while I'm wrapping up, then I'm happy to answer them. Um, the goal of Ink and Ribbon is to make fewer books, but make them, I want to say, subjectively better from a craft perspective, because we believe that poems um, deserve care, time, and we believe in the physical presence of books, right? The smell, the textures, especially in this digital age. I think it's an important part of the world, and so we really are building for the long conversation, not just chasing a moment or short term. How you guys can get involved are a few ways. Tomorrow we have our announcement of our first ever book. This is super exciting. Um, we signed our first author a month ago. We've been working on the plan, and tomorrow there'll be an announcement of what that book is, who the author is. So stay tuned for that. On February the 15th, we'll open pre-orders for that book. And so that will be something that I'm super excited about, and would love for you guys. Every book you buy from us helps us fund another poet, another author. Um, and yeah, I'm so excited about that book because it surprised me how much I've really been drawn to the words. I think it's a beautiful piece and something I'm very proud of, and excited that it's our debut. Um, Open reading is open until February the 14th, so you can still get involved. Open reading, you go to inkandribbon.org/submissions. See all of the information there. You can click through and use Subfolio. There's a $15 reading fee. Again, anything that you submit, like that $15 goes back into our operations. There's no profit here. It's just about funding more work. The Lemon Light Prize with a $3,000 prize fund kicks off March the 1st. I have a judge. I have two judges potentially. I have one judge I'm super excited about. I can't announce it yet, but just waiting for final approval. A really established poet who is going to be our final judge on that. So hopefully I'll announce that in the next 2 to 3 weeks if we come to final agreement on that happening, if she has time to do so. The other way, there's more questions coming in, so I'm going to just jump to those. Actually, let me just finish off how else you can get involved. So open reading, Lemon Light Prize. The other way you can get involved, and this is just about your generosity. We are the press that Substack built. There's 2 ways or 3 ways you can really help. That's being a patron and donating to our nonprofit. And there's a couple of ways that you can do that. If you are a US citizen, I recommend you go to inkandribbon.com and then to our donation page and use our little donations box, because you get a tax note, which means it's tax deductible. If that means something to you, please do it, right? And that means that submission, that donation on our page, the tool we use there are no fees at all for that processing. So we get 100% of the money that's donated, whether it's $5, $10, $100, $1,000, whatever. Like all of that comes straight to us. That's so valuable for us. So you can do that on inkandribbon.org. Alternatively, you can subscribe on Substack to our paid version, right? Like the $80 a year renewal, $8 a month. There are fees involved with Substack and Stripe, but like at least that's coming to us, and it makes it easy for you to subscribe to what we're doing, and that goes straight back into our organization. Again, helps us publish more poets. And then if anyone's interested in major gifts, not expecting anything here, or wanted the hardbound book, like just message me on Substack, and we can talk about that as well. So I'm just going to go through and answer the final questions that we've got coming through. Um, do you have plans to market your publication in other areas so it reaches a broader audience? In other words, um, well, I think the way that we're doing marketing our publication really is through the channels that we're live on. So Substack has been amazing, right? So we reach, I think we've got about 5,000 subscribers to Income Ribbon in 4 months. So if we grow this community, we're going to reach more people, and we only reach more people by you guys sharing the work that we're doing and building this community together. So that's how I think we're gonna reach. I'm not. I work in marketing and advertising myself. Like we're not in a place where we can do huge advertising campaigns or even small amounts. We have a Google Ads grant, which means we can spend up to a certain amount each month pushing out some messaging. But really, I think Substack is how we grow this press. It's been the biggest joy to be part of this community, and I think that's how we're continuing. And how do I decide how many books to print? So Pilgrim, I'm not sure if you saw the earlier economic model. We decided very early on to really create limited edition versions. So 250 of our paperback, which I shared before, which is similar to this, and then 3 of these clamshell hard cases for kind of exclusivity and fundraising. The reason we do that amount is, on average, poetry books don't sell huge amounts, right? There's not like, unless you're Mary Oliver, you're probably selling on average, each poetry book sells between 200 and 500, even if you're established. And so there's not a huge demand at scale unless you're like the big the big few poets out there. So one is having an understanding of market economics and the reality of like, hey, are we really going to sell 1,000 of these books? My experience of self-publishing is it's hard to sell 1,000 books. Uh, Secondly, the channels that I want to distribute on, I'm not selling via Amazon. The reason I'm not selling via Amazon is um, one, they take an egregious percentage of your revenue, and it's just not the model that I feel that is befitting of a press that is about craft. So we are going intentionally direct to consumers, direct to you guys. And we are using a few select independent bookstores in America to get our book out there. But even if you think about the economics, right, it costs $11 to produce this. We're selling it for $18.95. A bookstore will take 50%, so 40% maybe at best. And so that means we get $9 for a book that costs $11 to produce. So we're already losing $2, and that's not including any time like for operational costs. That's just on the printing costs. The reason we can do that is through donations. We're a non-profit, and so I could raise the price and say this is $25, this is $30, but people wouldn't buy it, and so maybe they will later on when we've established ourselves. So we have to think conservatively because I also have a board that I'm part of that I need to answer to in terms of how do we think economically about the non-profit and make it sustainable. And I think that's the key word. We want to be a sustainable non-profit that produces more and more work in a sustainable fashion, that thinks about the craft and gets the work out to the people that really care about it. So hopefully that answers the questions. It's an economic question, but it's really a heart answer. It's about like what is the reality of the publishing world and how do we want to get the books in the right hands of the right people, not just on Amazon, because I just don't believe in that model for what we're doing. Maybe right for other people, but not right for Ink and Ribbon. Cool. So I think unless there's any other questions, I am going to end it there. But look, thank you for your time. Please follow along, share this post, donate, submit your poems. Sorry, I knew I'd get questions just as I try and log off. So, Julianne, the way that you'll be able to buy our book is direct on our website. So it's not live yet, but if you go to our website, we'll have a store. So you can buy directly on there, and so it'll be the book we're publishing soon will be 18.95 plus, $5 postage in the US, for example. And so that's how you buy. And so when you have all the options to buy just the same as you would via Amazon, checkout, Stripe, etc. Um, and Yeah, we welcome your engagement. So I'm going to wrap up because I don't want to get more questions, and I'll probably come back to them. But like, if there are any more questions when I've jumped, I'll try and come back to them in the messages underneath the post. So, how you can get involved? Follow us, share our work. Number one, that's it. Just be engaged. Just be engaged with what we do. Every time you share posts that we do or support us, it reaches more people. Be an advocate for us as an organization. That's like the greatest thing you can do. Secondly, if you're a poet, submit your work, right? We want your work. I got one bit of hate this week about someone saying that I would never publish a debut author. And it was kind of ironic because I just signed a debut author. So we are real. We are finding new authors. We found this author through an open reading. It does exist. It's not like a vanity project, I can assure you. It's a lot of sweat and tears to get to this point. And I love it. I love what we're doing. Um, the open reading's open until February the 14th. IncomeRibbon.org submissions. Lemon Light Prize, $3,000 prize fund kicks off March the 1st. Watch this space there. If you haven't got a manuscript, submit there. We're looking for poetry editors. Probably over time, again, it's volunteer work. So people that can help us manage some of the submissions or first pass of some of the poems that are coming through, open to people wanting to get involved there. And then finally, if you can donate, anything helps. $5, $100, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Like, no judgment. It's just anything helps us sustain the press. So that would be really useful. I know there's other questions coming in. I've answered most of these. I'll come back to you privately if you've asked questions and I haven't got to them. But look, have a great weekend. The world's crazy out there. Like, take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Write good work. Eat an apple. Be healthy. Yeah, love you all. Thank you.